Yesterday, amidst so much going on in our community, in our country, in the world, our smaller community, the modern Orthodox community, centrist, open Orthodox, whatever label you use, paused at the death of a giant. I was thinking a couple of minutes ago that between myself, Rabbi Hartstock, and Rabbi Kroll, I think we spent probably collectively 40 years at Yeshiva University under the leadership of Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb. And his death is something that I believe, we believe, should be marked by all in our community for what he brought to this community and beyond. Parshat Naso talks about the Nisiim. Of course, he was a Nasi professionally, but he was a Nasi, he's a prince of a person, a giant in Torah, a giant in scholarship, a visionary who impacted so many of our teachers, parents, communal leaders, and community members. So this is a town hall where we normally get together to share information, but it's also a time that has become a time that we get together to be joined as a community for important things. And we thought it was important to mark his passing and to pay tribute to him, who unfortunately, because of this pandemic, was buried without the kavod acharon that he truly deserved. Additional sadness. We are blessed to have in our community President Emeritus of Yeshiva University, Richard Joel, member of our community, a grandparent in our school, former parent at SAR High School, and somebody who was connected to Rabbi Lamb for decades and has agreed to share a few words of tribute tonight before we move on to some other informational pieces of our program. President Joel, the President of Emeritus of Yeshiva University, the Brodman family professor, so many connections to Riverdale and to our community, and somebody who I know can give us a picture of Rabbi Lamb and what he means and meant to all of us. Thank you, President Joel, for being here tonight and for agreeing to address us. We appreciate that. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Krause and Hanhala of the school. Thank you for asking me to share a few thoughts on the life of Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb. A large presence and a large absence. Norman Lamb was a defining force in fashioning a Torah Judaism of depth and texture and color. His brilliant presentations, his commanding presence, and his provocative insights brought the light of Torah to the American landscape. But I had the privilege of knowing him as my predecessor at Yeshiva University, and he gave me the precious gift of trust and guidance and friendship. Like many of us of my generation and our community, I had known Dr. Lamb from his time at Camp Marashah. I remember visiting him in the Lamb cabin at Camp Marashah. I remember him through his teachings at the Yeshiva University seminar programs. I remember him through my friendship with his children by being part of his administration at Cardozo Law School and occasionally as a guest speaker during my tenure at Hillel. But as his successor, he extended to me a hand of intimacy very difficult for a man both private and proud. From the beginning, we would meet regularly. He told me that he would give me all the advice I asked for on one condition. And the condition was that I would never feel bound to take his advice. And he was very sincere about that and strict about it. Our meetings were wonderful personal sessions where he shared his views on Torah, on Jewish issues, on family, on his hopes, and on his fears. He was a man of deep core principle. He was very real. I could tell him anything and trust him completely. So after 5 years of my presidency, one day in the mail I got a letter. That's something that we used to get on paper, that he wrote me on my 5th anniversary So he wrote to me, but in that letter, I think he very much revealed himself. This is what he said, quote, "I am the only one who knows what you are going through in your quotidian activities. The aching feeling that you are not getting enough done. The worry that there is no time for all that has to get done. The specter of potential failure. And far more significant, the joy of achievement and pleasure you have as more and more students are exposed to the teachings of YU," unquote. A little insight into how he viewed his tenure and his challenge. We must remember also that he was, for decades, our fiercest fighter for teaching and defending a life of Torah Umada, an ascendant modern orthodoxy. He articulated the foundations of our community and of this amazing school. He gave smicha to all your leadership and signed the diplomas of most of our teachers at SAR. And as more and more alumni of SAR are studying at yeshiva, we all benefit from what were his efforts. He knew profoundly that quality Jewish education is the essential element for our future. Dr. Lamb was a private public man. He craved the safety of home and family. He was first and foremost a husband and soulmate of his beloved wife, Mindy, Zichrona Livracha, who passed away just now in April. They were a wondrous couple, warm and regal at the same time. And they had 4 wonderful, proud, joyous children and a slew of grandchildren. He was a teacher, a rabbi, and a scholar unmatched. But I think the most profound impact will have been made by Norman Lamb, the philosopher, who wrote over 10 books, championed concepts of Torah Umada, the royal reach, and faith and doubt. On the YU website, if you go to thelambheritage.org, there are 800 of his sermons digitized in his typing and in his hand, and they are all wonderful life stories and life lessons. He was motivated by his rare intelligence, a deep drive, a profound drive, and an absolute faith in God and an absolute belief in the Jewish people. Dr. Lamb posited a Jewishness that was complex, not simple, textured, not flat, and he invited us into that conversation. He recognized that we live with real issues. He thought those challenges should be taken seriously, as our community takes these challenges seriously, and as SAR takes them seriously. In his book, Faith and Doubt, he charged us to be in conversation with the world. Quote, "If we have nothing to say to the world, we must stop talking. If we have something important to say, even if we can only intuit it and are unsure about how to formulate it, we must keep trying. Then, even if we do a great deal of stammering, we ultimately will articulate that which will again distinguish us as a light unto the nations. For we have a vital message for modern Jews and modern man," unquote. In a sense, we have all been his students and are all the better for it. Hey Zichro Baruch, may his memory be for a blessing.
Thank you, President Joel. We are grateful to you for taking the time to be with us this evening and for sharing your thoughts, your memories, painting a portrait of Dr. Lamb and sharing some of your private moments with him. We thank you very much and look forward to sharing other celebratory occasions in the future as well. We'd like to move at this point to the next part of our program. I imagine that many of us have been following developments in Israel in terms of their management of COVID-19, the coronavirus, and we are aware that Israel has been opening up ahead of us and that schools have opened up as well. Imagine that many have followed some of the challenges that have taken place in schools in Jerusalem and a little bit further out. And it is important for us as we prepare, look towards September, to learn from schools around the world that have already opened up, will allow us to understand some of the challenges and to prepare in the best way that we possibly can. We are blessed to have with us, I was gonna say this evening, but it's actually this morning for Dr. Mark Shinar, who, it's hard to believe, but agreed to join us at 3:15 in the morning in Israel. Dr. Shinar is, of course, will always be a beloved member of the SAR community, serving as a faculty member at the Academy long ago, and 8 years as Director of General Studies at SAR High School, and has founded a remarkable school in Israel. He is the principal of Zarkor, made Aliyah 2017 to make that happen. And he has on-the-ground perspective in terms of what is happening in Israel and lessons that we can learn in terms of how COVID has been managed on the school front. It is my pleasure to introduce Mark and to express to you, Mark, Hakarat Tov, for being here with us tonight. Mark.
Thank you, Rabbi Hartstark. Thank you, President Joel. And in my defense, when Rabbi Krauss invited me to join this illustrious meeting, he wrote in the text that it would be at 8:15 at night. And
Smile, Mark, smile.
I jumped right on that. Absolutely, 8:15. It was only about 4 hours later when it dawned on me exactly what time it was going to be in Israel. But I'll take that one for the team. And as far as I'm concerned, aside from obviously being extremely grateful to come back and see you all, and I'm scrolling through the pages just to see the faces of friends and loved ones that I haven't seen, or my kids haven't seen in quite some time. I'll tell you that SAR has been a true thought leader for us here in Israel and around the world when it comes to establishing an online community and making norms for what it means in a very not normal time to bring people back together. And I want to say that my presence here tonight is, I'm very happy to do it and speak to you about my experience in Israel, but it's also a large amount of Hakarat Tov that I have to SAR and also to as a school principal here. Way back when this thing started for us here, you were already ahead of the game, unfortunately, but you had taken the ball and run with it and created something quite beautiful from something quite painful and heartbreaking. So I just want to say thank you to SAR. I've been following very closely from day one what you've been doing, and it's a pleasure and it's an honor and a duty to share a little bit about what we've been doing here on this side since our return. So what I want to say first and foremost is whatever we're doing right now is a work in progress. I don't speak for everybody. I certainly don't speak for the state of Israel. But hopefully the experiences that I've had as the principal of a school and returning back to school will give you a sense of what's coming down the pike, and that there is another side to this, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there will be. And although the rules will be tricky and difficult to navigate at times, they are a sign for good things to come. And I have no doubt that you and my friends in the States will get there soon. Just a word of background, as Rabbi Hartstark mentioned, I am principal of a new school. So what that means for our purposes is that right now the kids that we have in the school are very young, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, first, second grade. We're a relatively small school of 160 kids. So some of the things that I'm going to say are totally applicable regardless of how large a school is or how small a school is. And of course, can be scaled up or down as necessary. And some of the things that I'm going to say are very specific to the experiences that I'm having and may or may not be applicable. But I'm happy to share what we've done. And again, if there are questions, I don't know how questions have been done in the town hall before. I assume they're placed in the chat or something of sorts. I'm happy to answer any questions towards the end of the presentation. We were told on March 15th that we were going to be closing. To be perfectly specific, we were told on Saturday night, March 14th, that we were closing on Sunday, March 15th. Of course, school for us is Sunday through Thursday. And that has been a predictor of how a lot of the information that we've received has come out. And I imagine that may be a predictor for you too. I'm not sure if the circus of government bureaucracy is going to play out the same way in the States as it does in Israel. But it's a combination of the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health, and then finally the government that makes decisions that therefore, that then sends out hanchayot or instructions to principals and to schools to say what's going to be. And most likely we would receive that information sometime around 6 o'clock Friday afternoon or 9 o'clock Saturday night in preparation for a 7:30 a.m. Sunday morning. And so there was a lot of juggling and a lot of twisting ourselves into pretzels to make things work quickly. But we found out on March 15th that we were, on March 14th that we were closing on March 15th. And like SAR, we probably did a little bit more scrambling than SAR, but we scrambled to create an online program, and we got kids set up online. A little bit different here in Israel. The internet bandwidth isn't that great. The homes aren't large enough for people to be in different rooms for online classes. And of course, we're running a younger school, so kids in pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and having online Zoom classes had their own challenges, especially those of you here that are early childhood educators. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to teaching pre-KK, even first and second grade on an online platform. Nonetheless, we mobilized and we did with the same lack of clarity that you've had. When will it be over? Paying attention and not a real clear sense of where the road was taking us. Fast forward just 7 weeks. And by May 1st, we had heard rumors, which was a Friday, that we were most likely going to be opening again on Sunday, May 3rd. And those were just rumors. And it wasn't until Saturday night, May 2nd, that we heard that on Sunday, May 3rd, schools were opening for grades 1, 2, and 3, only first, second, and third grade in the country. So no pre-KK, and my own children who are older and kids in 4th grade above and nationally were not coming back. And they were going to start with the first, second, and third grade. And the logic behind that was clear. There were two components. Why first, second, and third? Firstly, there was a sense that in order to get parents back to work, we had to get younger kids back into school. And the research around how vulnerable younger kids were to the virus. But at the same time, they were not prepared to bring back younger kids than first, second grade, meaning pre-KK or even the younger kids, the 2, 3-year-olds, because they still were very, very conscious about social distancing and chitui, which is disinfection in between play, and how the toys were going to work and how things were going to work. And they weren't ready to bring back early childhood because it was clear that in Israel, first grade already is very much desks and rows. It's a little different in the States, and it's different in my school where we're heavily play-based and developmental. But still, the younger grades, the kindergartens, the pre-Ks, etc., they were not ready to bring those kids back because they couldn't quite propose a plan by which to keep those kids and their teachers safe. So they wanted to kind of play it out first with first, second, and third grade. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see that happening for you as well. Again, knowing that I came back in May at the end of our academic year, and please God, you'll be coming back at the beginning of your academic year in September, it may be a little different, but at least that's how we experienced it. One of the things that was most surprising to me when we were getting ready to open up our first and second grade, we don't have a third grade yet, which is why we didn't open up third yet. But one of the things that surprised me most was it wasn't really about the technical rules and regulations, although they themselves were very detailed and very, very complex. And I had said this to our faculty many, many times. We got a list of rules from the government, and those rules would shift by the minute. And I'm not exaggerating that. They would put out a set of rules. The teachers union or the government would say, no, that's not going to work for us. They would say, okay, hold on, we'll be back to you in 15 minutes. And they were literally back with a new set of rules in 15 to 20 minutes. It was that fluid, and you had to roll with punches at a pretty rapid rate. But we had felt that regardless of the instructions at any given time, and regardless of the reality that they weren't always logical to us, and there were often instructions that felt conflicting we knew that we were going to follow, and that's true of as all schools, I believe, we followed those rules to the letter of the law, black and white, with very little interpretation. There were a few times that the rules would come out and it would say, to the best of your ability, do this. And we understood that as giving us a little bit more wiggle room than other rules that were very, very clear. These are what you have to do, and I'll go through those in a moment. But for me, what was surprising was that the psychological aspect of the return was a whole lot more complicated than I would have necessarily anticipated. I had thought on a certain base level that everybody would just be thrilled to get back to school, get the kids out of the house, go back to some semblance of normal life, which back in May 3rd, which was just a month ago, looks very different than it does even today. But there were people who were ready at the gates of the school at 7:30 on that first day, take my kids, see you later. And then there were certainly parents to this very day that have not yet sent their kids back to school because of a lot of different reasons, either fear, concern, anxiety, underlying health issues, the unknown, any of the above and all of the above. And so it's important for schools to be prepared for the reality that it's not just going to be everybody sending their kids back. And we also have to juggle the fact that we have kids that are in school and we still have our students that are not yet in school. And what was even more complicated, and I speak to school administrators and leaders for that, is we also had to deal with that on the faculty side as well. Not every faculty member was ready to return to school, and there were very clear rules and regulations and laws about what that meant and the implications for that. But for our purposes, it's important to remember that we can come back to school and feel full steam ahead, but there are certain limitations psychologically that we didn't necessarily anticipate until we experienced them, and that forced us to juggle internally within the school system to make it work. And I guess for me, that was one of the biggest lessons is even when the government says, okay, it's open and it's time to come back, different people are going to experience that in very different ways. And it's incumbent upon us in the community to be respectful and careful and very empathetic to those realities. But at the same time, we have work to do and we have schools to run and we have kids that need us, and finding that balance was and continues to this day to be complex. The Hanchayot, the regulations, as I said, shifted almost daily once we opened our doors. And so I imagine that will be true for you as well. And there were very specific ideas of kids coming back to school and how that would work. But we realized that once kids were back into school and life was starting to move and the wheels were starting to turn, it was a very rapid shift to things coming together very quickly. Once kids are back in school, play dates start happening again. The playgrounds started opening again. Even before we anticipated that to happen, they happened on a more natural level. And I think the government on a certain level was trying to keep up with the realities of kids and how deeply the kids and their rhythms set the tone and the pace for us, the adults, in their lives. When we came back, we had to come to terms with the fact that we're a very progressive school, very similar to SAR, obviously, because I built the school based on everything I know from SAR. So very similar to SAR, very deeply invested in group think, in group work, in a lot of kids working together and play. And what was remarkable to me is that we had to come back and almost change our philosophy of education to match the instructions and the regulations, where now kids are coming back and they have to have their own space, their own desks, their own pencils, their own pens. There's no more sharing of material. Again, what I'm saying is to this very day, everybody has their own space and box, if you will, where they learn. And to take a school where everything was collaborative and group and split everybody up into small little boxes was actually much more challenging than I would have anticipated. On a technical level, everybody needed their own desk. We don't have individual desks for kids. We have a lot of group tables and a lot of round spaces. And so we had to figure out ways creatively to make kids have their own spaces. In some cases, they were in their own desks. In some cases, we took very thick cardboard and had to create mechitzot, like literally stand-up mechitzot between lunch tables so that kids could have their space and they wouldn't be too close to each other. We had to go into each classroom and separate desks 6 feet apart from desk to desk, which changes the entire dynamic of a room once furniture kind of eats the entire space, and now kids aren't able to move as freely as they normally would. What was obviously most pressing was that every class that came back, for us, it's classes of 20, but for Israel, it could have been classes of 30 or 35. Every class had to be split in half. So regardless of how big the class was, for us, a class of 20 had to become 2 separate, well, what I'll call capsules, because that's how they're called in Israel. 2 separate capsules for every 20 became a class of 10. We have 2 teachers for every class of 20. One is a native Anglo, one is a native Israeli. We don't have Judaic and general studies split in that same way because our general studies is also taught in Hebrew. But we have a native Anglo and we have a native Israeli. And what happened is they ended up splitting off, those 2 co-teachers ended up splitting off into 2 capsules of 10. The rules were very clear that kids over the course of any given day, we're allowed to be exposed to up to and no more than 4 different individual faculty members, 4 teachers only. That means the kids in their capsules of 10 could have, let's say, their English teacher and their Hebrew teacher. Maybe I could attach the gym teacher and the music teacher, and those were going to be the 4 teachers that those kids had. The problem was, once I attached the gym teacher to the 1st grade, for example, regardless of the fact that, that he would normally be teaching the whole school, which is pre-K through 2, he could not teach 2nd grade anymore. Because while kids were only allowed to be exposed to up to 4 teachers, teachers were only allowed to be exposed to up to 60 kids, and that was the rule. So therefore, I had to change the whole schedule. So our 2nd graders who would normally have gym now don't have gym. And our 1st graders who would normally have art now don't have art because the art teacher is connected to the 2nd grade. And so what I ended up having to do was hire teenagers, believe it or not, that were not yet in school, to just come back to school and supervise and watch recesses and try to help the teachers, give them a little bit of breathing space and room, because all of those specialties, the art, the music, the gym, the chess, the makerspace, the different things that we're doing in school could only be attached to one specific grade at a time because those teachers couldn't cross more than 60 kids at any given time. So that's another thing you might want to anticipate, is that teachers coming back may have to be relegated to specific sections. Coming back changed our entire arrival protocol. We don't have buses yet because we're a small school, but this is also something to pay attention to. Normally we'd have carpools come. The law was no carpools. Normally we would have parents drop kids off and go at 7:30 in the morning. Now we're staggering our arrival because as kids are coming to school, 2 things have to happen. First of all, they have to hand in a signed Tofas Briut, a signed health form that confirms that they don't have fever, that nobody in their house, that they don't have a fever, that nobody in their house had a fever, that nobody in their house was in isolation, that they haven't been traveling or they don't have their parents haven't been traveling. And every single morning, again, until today, still, we're down there at the bottom collecting forms. But not only are we collecting forms, as kids are coming out of their cars, we bought thermometers that you kind of scan the foreheads, and we're taking temperatures of kids and faculty every single day as they're coming in. We had one situation where a child had a slight fever, low-grade fever. It was also that week where it was 107 degrees here, if you were keeping up with what was going on in Israel. We had to send the child home. It was clear as day that the child wasn't sick. But the child got out of the car, took the temperature, and went back into the car because there was nothing we could do about that. Parents were understanding, and we were apologetic, of course, but that's how it has to be right now. And so it was very interesting in the rhythm of school. You know, when kids aren't feeling well, we usually tea, a Band-Aid, and go back to class. But now when kids aren't feeling well or claim to not be feeling well, all antenna have to be up. And we're responding and reacting to that much more quickly than we normally would. Once the kids were in school, staggered, no playgrounds, no slides, no ropes park, none of that, and no balls, nothing that will be shared person-to-person, hand-to-hand contact. So kids are now immediately going into their capsules, which is certainly not an ideal way to start your morning when you're a young kid or when you're an older kid. But that's what we had to do. We ended up the day before school started buying lots of jump rope, sidewalk chalk, bubbles, as many individualized games as we possibly could find, so that kids during recess time, which I want to just kind of stress, had to be choreographed exceptionally well, because capsules are not allowed to integrate with capsules. So if one capsule, let's take a first grade class that's split into 2 groups of 10, those 2 groups of 10 aren't interacting outside on the recess field. So they now have to have separate spaces and times for recess. And if you walked around during recess, you'd see a lot of kids playing kind of in parallel, and old games like belts and jump sticks came back very quickly, and kids are super ingenuitive, so it's fantastic to see what they could do and come up with. But the soccer, the basketball games, all of the slides, all those things were now roped off, and were roped off actually until just about 4 or 5 days ago. And so we had to create a very different dynamic for recess. I'll tell you the great thing about that was there were no fights in the school for about 4 weeks. No fights over balls, no bloody knees, no Band-Aids. It was the calmest, most Stepford school experience I could have imagined, because everybody was just kind of walking in their lanes. What was remarkable is that it worked. And that the kids and the teachers inherently understood what was happening and what was going on, but at the same time, it felt very calm and very, very easy, and also kind of not the mess that is normally school. And we had to adjust some of our expectations around that too. As we staggered our returns, the first thing we had to do was reteach the kids a certain new norms around hygiene and what it means to be back in school. That meant that we were doing a lot more social distancing and teaching that word. As an English immersion school, we could do it in 2 languages. We were teaching what social distancing meant, and we were doing hand washing from the minute the kids came into school. Before they went into their classrooms, they were doing hand washing. Here's a trick. Part of the Hanchayot was that every capsule, please listen carefully, every capsule had to have its own bathroom and sink. Every capsule. Nobody is equipped to have every group of 10 have their own bathroom and sink. For our purposes, which I wouldn't recommend larger schools doing, we ended up taking boys' bathrooms, putting big, thick sheets in between stalls, and turning boys' bathrooms into co-ed boys and girls' bathrooms, splitting up bathrooms, taking the Chadar Ochel bathroom and turning that into a capsules bathroom, because there's no Chadar Ochel, there's no communal eating anymore. We have a catered program, and instead of kids coming to the Chadar Ochel, to the dining hall where they would get food either family style or by coming to the window, now the caterer is bringing us kind of like those old TV dinners with the cellophane plastic and that you have to open up. And now kids are now eating in their own space. As a green school that would not use disposable or chat pami, that was very jarring for us. But now we're using a ton of plastic, unfortunately. But now every kid is getting his or her own portion and eating in the classrooms, because the Chadar Ochel is off limits. As I said, the bathrooms become a trick. We had to hire extra support staff and cleaning staff. There's a lot of cleaning and disinfecting that's happening, especially in the bathrooms and the sink, to make sure that the space remains clean and virus-free. But that was another kind of technical acrobatic trick that we had to do, was making sure that there were enough bathrooms for kids. In our first week, I said hand washing became a ritual, and I want to talk a little bit about masks also. So the rules were that first grade and down, and I assume this will be true for you, the rules were that masks, you don't have to wear masks. Second grade through 6th grade have to wear masks in the in-between spaces, meaning when they're in classrooms or eating, they don't have to wear masks, but if they're outside at recess or moving from one space to another, they have to be wearing masks. The same is true for faculty. And then 7th grade and older have to be wearing masks even in the classroom. And that was all fine and good until it was 107 degrees. And then all of a sudden a new law came out that said, you know what, we don't have to wear masks, it's too hot. And so for that week when it was really, really hot here, we weren't wearing masks. And then the next week when things came down to a normal 75 or 78, we were back wearing masks. And that was also a trick to help kids kind of understand, yes, last week we were wearing masks, this week we're not wearing masks, next week we will be again. And that back and forth became a real part of the conversation when we were talking to kids about just kind of keeping ourselves safe and healthy. what's really happening ever since we opened up to first and second grade is in rapid fire, the rules are loosening and changing. And just a week after we opened up first and second grade, the government indicated a return for the ganim, for the kindergarten, the pre-K, et cetera. But those rules were going to be different than what it was in first and second grade. Let's take a kindergarten class of 20. A kindergarten class of 20 wouldn't come back into 2 groups of 10. They would come back into 4 groups of 5. And how would that work? A group of 10 came back, and we had to split that group of 10 into 2 mini capsules of 5 within the same classroom at the same day. So let's take a group of 20 and break them up into 10 and 10. This group of 10 would come, this would be the A group, and this would be the B group. The A group came in 2 groups of 5 on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Then the B group would come on Wednesday, Thursday of that week. And then the next week, the B group would come Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then the A group would come Wednesday, Thursday. Now, my logic would indicate for early childhood, let's do kind of a rotation where it's Sunday one group, Monday the other group, Tuesday one group, Wednesday the other group. So you don't have 5 days in a row where younger kids are not in school for every 5 days that they are. My interpretation was irrelevant. This is the rule, and it had to be. The reason why this was the rule was because they were more concerned about kindergarten about doing deep cleans in between groups. And they couldn't do a rotation of every other day because they couldn't handle the deep clean of the kindergarten every day. So if the A group was there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, at least they were there for 3 days before a deep clean had to happen. Then a deep clean had to happen on Tuesday night, and that was a complete disinfection of games, toys, wipe down. I mean, everything that you can imagine in the younger grades in the ganim, in the pre-Ks and kindergartens had to be wiped down. We hired staff to help us do that alongside the teachers. And then the new group would come on Wednesday and Thursday. They would come back on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and it wouldn't be again until Tuesday night that we had to do a deep clean. And we had to set tables down the middle of the classroom so that the kids knew these 5, you're here, and these 5, you're here. And even though the kids could see each other within their mini capsules, they themselves weren't allowed to play together. They themselves had different recess schedules in groups of 5. It was oppressive and really, really difficult for us to manage. And again, early childhood teachers are probably, their heads are spinning right now about all the challenges that would create. And what was amazing is it took us about a week and a half to build that program, only to find out 4 days later that it was not sustainable in the country. The ganim, the teachers kind of revolted, and they said, no, we're not doing this anymore. And a week later, they said, okay, you know what? Forget the 5 and 5. We'll do it 10 and 10. And we'll have mini cap, we'll bring everybody back. So a week later, everybody is back. But still with tables down the middle and 2 groups of 10 now in the classroom, but a more rigorous disinfection kind of protocol. And for pre-K and early childhood, that social distancing and hand washing is A, so important, and B, so challenging because the kids are little. And so that became a large part of our dialogue with the kids. And the more we helped kids learn those rhythms and routines and make them habits, the more the rules kept shifting on us. And so, you know, in the last week, I will say that things are almost, believe it or not, back to normal in school. The tables down the middle are gone. The kids are allowed to integrate, while classes are not allowed to have recesses together. Those capsules are now collapsed, so groups of 20 are back together. Tables are back together, and that's just a month after we've come back. And at the same time, you're probably hearing in the news, as we are paying very close attention, that we wouldn't call it, right now, nobody calls it a second wave and everybody's refusing to call it as such, but schools and other places in Israel are seeing cases pop up again. It started a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago in Rehovot, which is about 15 minutes away from where our school is, where, you know, a teacher was diagnosed positive with COVID, and they decided first and foremost that they were just going to isolate that class for 2 weeks. And then within about, I don't know, an hour, they realized that the cross between that class and siblings and that teacher was too wide to take accountability. So they closed that school down for 2 weeks. And for about a week, that was the only news we heard. And then in the past few days, more cases coming out of Yerushalayim and more pronounced cases have us paying attention There's been no instructions from the government that says we're moving back to closing down. There's been no indication that the rules are shifting, but I am sending letters home every single day, reminding, begging parents, kids, masks, even during dismissal, because our dismissal is now staggered, whereas it used to be we would open our gates and parents would come onto campus. To this day, parents are still not allowed on campus, so we're not allowed to have people or visitors come onto school campus right now. So my associate principals and I, we go outside, we text names on WhatsApp of parents that are waiting for their kids, and kids come out. What we're seeing right now is that while things are loosening and moving towards whatever normal is, and our anticipation is that September is going to be as normal as September can be, we're also paying attention to the realities that it's not over. And it's something we have to keep talking to kids about, because a lot of times when you're back in your rhythm and norm, it feels over, and it's not. And so we're paying close attention to that. For me, I guess the two biggest pieces of wisdom or strength that I can give, and with that I'll conclude, is A, we roll with the punches, because it's not going to be clear and it's not going to be logical all the time. But for us, and I know for you as well, the goal isn't necessarily clarity and logic. It's also movement and moving towards something that will hopefully be better. And so being able to roll with the punches allowed us to adjust and to be flexible and to make things work as quickly as possible. And I think for me, what I learned on a personal note was that the anticipation of the return was significantly harder than the return. And I was so nervous the days leading up to opening school, and that first week, it was as school leadership, the responsibility, and as parents, as adults, the responsibility feels on a certain level staggering. And then you come back and you realize that the kids can do this, and they're significantly better adjusted and adept at handling these kind of shifts and changes than we are. And any kind of concern or fear that I had was really allayed very quickly when I got to see those kids again. So that helped a lot. So that's our story. And I hope that helps you think about it a little bit. And I'm happy to take questions. I see there's a few in the chat. I don't know how to moderate that.
We're going to get to Dr. Rocker, but first of all, I want to thank you for volunteering to showing up on August 15th to open up our school. We really appreciate that. So we'll see you then. And thank you for sharing your information with us. There's a question about what's going on with the yeshivot for gap year, and I don't know if you have any wisdom on that, but I know that they're certainly planning on opening. But again, two months is a little bit of a lifetime away. So
yeah. So as I said, the rules keep shifting so quickly. So SAR is opening. People are saying that September here in Israel. A lot of it does depend on travel regulations and what's coming in and out. The 2-week quarantine and how you handle that, and if that will lift. Right now, the plan is for gap years, as far as I know. Opening, and we're moving forward. And Litzari, I don't know that I'm going to be able to visit the States this summer and my family, but I will be super supportive from afar if I can be.
Thank you very much. You'll hopefully enjoy some of the comments. People really appreciate your sharing your information with us, and hopefully we will continue these conversations. We have a lot to learn from you, as we always have. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Stick around. You have to stay until the end of the meeting. Don't go back to sleep.
Okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm awake.
Dr. Rocker is with, here he is. All right, Dr. Rocker. So we spoke 2 weeks ago, and we basically said, we don't know, we're waiting for more information. Now we'd like to hear, Memorial Day has passed. It's been beautiful weather. Everyone's trying to figure out about camps. I know that you don't make those decisions, but we are kind of, whatever you want to call it, phase 1, phase 2, but there's been a lot of movement. There's talk about minyanim opening up and things like that. And we'd really like to hear what's going on in the hospitals, what guidance you'd like to give us as families, for teenagers, for younger kids, what can be relaxed, what can't, inside, outside. Tell us what you know, tell us what we can do, and give us some good news, please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I apologize for this mosquito bite over my eyelid. It's a little weird looking. Mark, thank you, because you kind of set me up. Because part of what I was going to say is sort of preparing people emotionally for the next phase. And I think you just drilled it down at how complex and how challenging and how quickly it changes this way and that way. You really have to be nimble. So thank you for being nimble at your school. And that's kind of one of the main messages here. So talking about COVID in general, we are again better than we were 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, we were doing much better than even before that. So the peak in New York City in regards to COVID was really early April. And then the peak in regards to this MISC entity, which we were seeing in the kids, occurred probably 2-3 weeks ago in New York. So they are still seeing cases in other states. And we are seeing a dribble of cases, but we were having kids being admitted to the ICUs 2, 3, 4 a day around 3 weeks ago. And now, it's maybe 1 or 2 a week. The good news is, in regards to MISC, it is treatable. And the kids are doing remarkably well. There are still some questions about it in regards to long-term issues, especially in regards to their heart and their, the blood vessels of the heart. But so far it looks very promising in regards to the therapies that we're using and how well they are recovering. The Department of Health came out with a memo 2 days ago that was kind of interesting, but a little bit depressing or frustrating, because what it revealed to us was that in regards to the PCR and the swab of your nose, we know when you test, it's positive. It means that you have the virus. The thing that was confusing that they add, or not confusing, is a little bit challenging to understand, is you are at your peak of transmission. You are the most infected before you have symptoms. Once you have symptoms, the likelihood of you transmitting it to others starts going down. So you will still be testing positive. And we know that people can even test positive 6 weeks after they have their first symptoms. But it appears that basically 10 days from the day that your symptoms started, after 10 days, you really, the likelihood of transmitting the virus, even though you'll be positive, potentially positive, you're testing the nose, the likelihood of you passing it is close to 0. So again, if you, get, COVID, after 10 days and 3 days after your symptoms stop, the likelihood of transmitting is basically 0. The frustrating thing about that is you are at the highest rate of transmitting when you aren't sick yet. And you don't know you're going to be sick until you're sick. And none of us are prophets and none of us know when that's going to happen. And so that still only reiterates the need for masks, because the way it is transmitted mostly is, from human contacts. We've learned, and the CDC has mentioned this, contact with objects, not really as much of an issue. It's really, the human interactions. And even the touching, one thing that I was happy to hear, because I think I touch my mouth a little bit more often, it's much more the nose and the eyes than the mouth. So I know some people have been questioning, are masks still important? And based upon this data, 100%, because it is not it's not just those who are sick, who have to protect themselves. It's the people who are going to be sick tomorrow. And no one carries around, that scarlet letter that tells them, oh, this is what's going to happen in the future. So even those tests that we are doing where we're checking people's temperature, that's great. But if we had a machine that could check their temperature tomorrow, that would be better. So it just makes it still a little bit of a challenge. And that's why this is still perpetuating in a way, despite social distancing and all of that. So we covered the Department of Health, we covered MISC, social distancing. Yes, it's sunny. Yes, people are now getting together. Yes, I went to Central Park, the other day, and I found my little space and I stayed there with my family. and then we played our, our games in that area, and everyone was in their little pod. And that's what is going to have to be the next reality. So the next thing I want to talk about, and Mark kind of set this up, is as parents, what we have to do right now is prepare our kids. Because again, I've mentioned this before, it is not going to be a binary switch where, okay, now you can do whatever. Mark made it very, very clear that we are not going to be returning to a normal reality. We're going to be returning to a very bizarre, reality that seems very unnatural. And it seems more unnatural to the adults than it does to the kids, which is reassuring. But I think those conversations have to be had over and over and over again, because I can't tell you the number of times I've been hearing, oh, this is what SAR thinks they want to do, but there's no way we're going to listen to that. That's crazy. Well, if you don't follow the rules, SAR will close, right? And that's, Israel right now, unfortunately, had more COVID cases than they've had in quite a long time. I was on the phone with relatives over Memorial Day weekend, and they were reminding me, there's only 10 new cases. You guys in New York are crazy. Well, today there were 98 new cases, and yesterday there were, I think, 58 new cases. So it is going up as they open up their doors more. And that's what's going to happen here as well. And just like what may happen in Israel, we have to be nimble, because if the Department of Health and the Department of Education say, this is what we're allowing, that's what, SAR and the communities will do. But then it may change a few days later or a week later when they see that things are a little bit different. So that's the thing that we have to be really sort of emotionally ready and mature to recognize, is have those conversations with our children and have those conversations with ourselves, because it sucks being the parent to constantly say no, 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 no. But if you set those expectations, it will be more helpful for you and for your children. So it's very clearly, let me start over. Hopefully school will open very clearly. If it does, it will not be the school that you know. And certainly what was laid out 2 weeks ago was a plan that, was completely sort of dystopian, but that may be what it looks like. I think that's all I have to say. Other questions?
Yeah, I mean, one question about this new stuff coming about surface transmission in terms of kids using jungle gym, kids playing ball together. Has the research on surface transmission changed with the guidelines?
So because there is less of a concern in regards to contact like those things, I think there probably is less of a concern in regards to, certainly with, soccer balls and things like that. And someone also had asked me a question about gloves. So I had mentioned this way earlier. Wearing gloves is only helpful if you take your gloves off. Insofar as if you wear gloves and then you're touching a whole bunch of things and then you touch your face and your eyes, it's just like your hands. They don't serve any purpose. But since contact is probably less of an issue, gloves are probably not the most important thing. If you're weighing out gloves versus masks, 100 times more.
Swimming pools?
Swimming pools, right? So in regards to swimming pools, in regards to water, it doesn't seem to be an issue. In regards to contact, it's just, yes, you could be in a park together, you could be in a pool together, but the answer is always going to be social distancing. So it's still going to be 6 feet. It's still going to be, let me jump over you, let me swim near you, but not. So it still has to be, with that space.
I know that you don't want to be, so I'm going to try not to put you in this position. I know that you don't want to be the posake on this, so to speak. But the questions coming up, including in our own plans, and the community knows this. We sent out a survey on Friday. We got probably close to 200 responses within an hour about the possibility of summer programming, which we are looking into to the extent that we can be helpful. But we're also trying to kind of weigh the guidelines, as you heard from Mark and as you heard from Dr. Rocker. These things are changing by the minute and by the day. But kind of moving towards this concept of small pods, small groups of kids playing together. Again, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but everyone's asking it in terms of, when school is out in 2 weeks and we want to move towards, being able to do something with small groups of people, whether it's two families finding buddy families, which I'm talking about, or just, again, small groups of kids, the same small groups of kids getting together a little bit. Do you know where the guidance is going? Do you know how to?
So I think that when the guidance goes there, the guidance will go there. So right now we don't have an answer to that. We're going to get there, right? We're not going to stay like this. And what I should have articulated, and again, Mark, thank you. You did sort of mention it. Being in our, this is all bad, you must stay in your home phase is actually easier because I know what the rules are. I know what I can and can't do. And the answer is almost always no. So that's fine. But when we start blending some of the permission and the not permission, then it gets a lot more challenging. And the, post-ec type questions, there's no, clear answer. It's the same issue with the virus. It spreads mostly from the mouth to other people who are close to you. That's the main issue. So when you can wear a mask and when you can stay apart and when you can wash your hands and not touch your face, that's what you should do. And then there's going to be small steps that we're taking. So yes, I think for mental health, for multiple reasons, it is important that we start getting to that next phase. But we also have to realize when we get to that next phase, we may have to stop and move back a little bit. And if not, but we should also know, even though I said Israel may change things, it may change things based upon a school district, we're not going to know sort of the whole public health issue for 2, 3, 4 weeks after we implement a change. When they say this school is closing, okay, that may change because of a specific teacher or a group of people, but in regards to, was this a dumb idea to move forward the way we did? We won't know that for 3 or 4 weeks. That's just the way that growth works and the spreading works. So we're going to have to be nimble and be consciously, thinking of we have to be paying attention to what the CDC and the Department of Health say.
Okay, I'm asking a very specific question because it just came up about visiting grandparents for short visits. Can the kids go inside, give them a hug or a kiss? Yes or no?
So wait a second. Social distancing. I don't know. Someone help me with this one. So no, right? So can you visit your grandparents? Yes. I went to my parents for the first time in 3-4 months yesterday. We social distance. We wore masks. We were far from each other. There was food, but there was food that was completely separated from each other. So can people get together? Yes, but you have to understand, older people are much greater risk in regards to the impact that this virus has on people. And I don't want to say something morbid. I'm going to say something morbid. The emotional complexity when older people die and family members think that they may have contributed to that is horrible, is absolutely horrible. And I don't wish it on anyone, but that is something that we deal with in the hospital frequently.
Okay.
So just don't put yourself in situations where it may get ugly.
I got it.
So yes, go make them happy, make yourself happy, distance.
There have been some questions about antibodies. I know that we mentioned a few weeks ago that we're working with, we're hoping to become part of a study affiliated with Columbia University on testing generally and on antibodies specifically. We are still working on that, and we hope to have information within the next week or two to be able to actually share with the community, specifically for the community, and to be part of a longitudinal study, which will hopefully shed light on the virus generally and help us in terms of getting the information that we can have. Josh, I'm gonna end with one, and I know we did it, but a lot of people are asking for clarification. So the question is, did you say that we can play ball with each other? Did you say that we can go on a jungle gym even if it's not disinfected? Did you say that?
So again, I think if you're doing the letter of the laws, they're probably going to say, In regards to soccer balls and things like that, I don't think it is much of an issue personally. But I'm going to toe the line and say, the CDC would probably not recommend that. Just like Mark was saying in regards to passing balls here and there. But I think we also recognize the CDC is also saying that we don't think that there is as much of a concern in regards to transmission from objects. So if there is significant distance between people, that is important. That's the main thing that you have to keep in mind.
Got it. Thank you. Mark, if you're not sleeping over there, when you have the groups of 10 in a classroom and I know there's 6 people, are you assuming that they're always socially distant from each other, or are you kind of?
Yeah, the older kids were social distancing. I think that the younger kids, it was a lot more tricky, and we had to give cues and remind, but we were very strict about that. I think we've loosened up a lot in the last week and a half, I would say. Like we're at that week increment. But yeah, the social distancing was a big part of what we were teaching and doing in the school. And the desks and the space. We put arrows down on the floor. We tried to really teach them what 2 meters or 6 feet looked like. We made it a math lesson. We did as much as we could to make social distancing a kind of a part of that culture in the return to school.
Got it. Thank you. President Joel, Dr. Shinar, Dr. Rocker, and all of you, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, to our guests. And Rabbi Hartstark, we have 2 weeks is like the last Monday kind of the school year, right?
Yep, we're on 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from tonight, and hopefully we will meet in smaller groups and different groups and pass on information as we have it. Thank you all. Stay safe. Laila Tov. Speak to you soon. Thank you.